Welcome to the Through These Gates podcast, the most rational Nebraska football show on the internet. I am Caleb Salvatore, your host. As always, we are audio only for this week. We're having some issues with the video. Hopefully we'll have that figured out by next week. Again, sorry, episode came out Monday instead of Sunday. I was at a bachelor party all day Sunday, and by the time I got home, I was absolutely in no shape to be recording anything. I did do a fantasy football draft that night, though, so we'll see how well drinking and drafting paid off. So let's get into it, right? 38-17 over North Dakota. I honestly don't see any way we lose another game this year. No, I mean, we want Bama, right? No, obviously that was sarcastic. I'm not as upset about it as I think a lot of people are. I think the team looked really flat, and I was honestly kind of expecting that. It was less than a week turnaround coming back from another country. It's a huge swing. Plus it was an emotional loss. You were risking the hangover game. You've heard scrutiny all week in the media and on social media from fans and press alike about who's going to replace your coach, what a train wreck your team already is, blah, blah, blah. So I was kind of expecting him to look flat, and then you find out that the flu or the shit or whatever it was that was going around got everyone on the team sick. It was kind of just the perfect storm, along with the fact, and I've got an opinion on this, I'll tell you in a second, but along with the fact that I think it's a little tough to get hyped up for a team like North Dakota. Now, 4 years ago, that would have been a valid excuse, that it's tough to get hyped up for an FCS team. But NIL and no longer being considered amateur athletes is a two-way street. So if you want to accept money to play football at a university, that's all fine and dandy. But at the end of the day, that's a tough game to get hyped up for, is no longer an excuse for poor play. Because you're a professional at that point, and that's your job. It doesn't matter if it's tough to get hyped up for that team. Do you think that's an excuse in the NFL? It doesn't matter. And you as a coach need to get these guys hyped up as well. So, I mean, if football is truly a source of income for you, this is your primary source of income. I mean, we're talking high six, even low seven figures for some of these guys. You have no excuse to not be pumped up for every single game. It is a job at that point. People working in an office, people working, at a construction site, food service, doesn't matter. Don't get to use that excuse because that's their job. They're not doing it for fun. I can go to a rec league basketball game and be like, yeah, I'm not kind of feeling it today. Not really feeling it. And just half-ass it. And no one's going to say anything to me, because I'm not being paid to be there. When that's your source of income, it's no longer an excuse. With that said, I think we got away with a lot of mistakes that you can't make against better opponents, which, again, isn't the end of the world. I don't think it's as big of a deal that they make these mistakes. I mean, there were passes that were thrown poorly that, Big Ten competition, that's a pick six. There were a couple of those, or at least a turnover. Guys in bad position on defense, players wide open, as we saw last week against Northwestern. Even against a mediocre Big Ten team, it's 6 points. There were a couple of those. So, with that said, I don't put too much stock in that because it's like I said, these are the games you need. You need these tune-up games first. It's why I hate starting the season off against a Big Ten team, even a mediocre one like, Northwestern or Illinois or Nebraska. But I hate opening a season up against a team like that for the sole reason that you don't get these games. There's not as much room for error. The teams need these tune-up games. I mean, you can even watch teams like Ohio State, Alabama. Any good team is going to make mistakes against these FCS teams in weeks 1 and 2 that if they were playing a better team, they wouldn't have that room for error. And that's solely because it's the tune-up game. That's what it's there for. Get the mistakes out of the way. Rely on the fact that you just have more talent than the other team, and eventually you're just going to be able to roll over them. I mean, as long as you don't make too many mistakes, like Iowa did and almost lost the game. But won't even get into that. So I'm not too worried about the level of play. I thought the second half looked solid. They didn't come out and beat the brakes off of them like I hoped. I said 23-point spread was the true win or loss, and they won by 21. That was the closest 38-17 game I have ever watched in my entire life. I think that's the best way to put it. So not too thrilled with the performance, but I'm not pressing the panic alarm like a lot of people did, like a lot of people are today. But here's my thing, and it's an inspiring development that I noticed. The offense had a couple bad turnovers, right? Thompson's pick was egregious. The fumble on the sack was bad. It was just a collapse in blocking. The offense had some bad plays. And maybe it just as fans, we had PTSD. It's like, oh, here we go. That interception a year ago, the game was over. We would have lost after that interception. If he would have thrown that interception a year ago, if Martinez did, the game was over. Facts. It's a fact. But the offense pushed on. They put their head down. They're like, you know what? We made a mistake, and we're going to go out there the next drive, and we're not going to do it this time. And they didn't. Even though it was against an FCS team, I think that's an inspiring, positive development that the offense didn't just fold at the first sign of trouble. I think that's a really good thing. And I think people, if you're going to be critical of the whole game, look at that perspective as well. The defense struggled all game, but the offense never just laid down and were like, we're done. All right, time to go into shoot myself in the foot over and over and over and over again mode. Never did that. So that's an inspiring development. So I guess we'll get into position by position grade. There's not really much to say about a game against a team like North Dakota unless it looked egregiously bad. Next week we got Georgia Southern, obviously. We'll do the preview for that on Friday. But so position by position grades, I'm going to go C for quarterback. I thought Thompson had some really good plays and he had some really bad plays. Again, there was that interception was bad. I'm not going to fault him on the fumble. That was just horrible blocking. But there were a couple plays he had that, again, against better competition, that's a turnover or a disastrous play, if nothing else. The pass to Palmer was a great catch by Palmer. That was not a good pass by Thompson. He threw it behind him. There was the pass interference that if he hits the guy in stride, that's 6 points. So I think a C is a fair grade. He didn't lose the game. It wasn't, turnover city or anything like that, but he didn't do them any favors. Running backs, A. I mean, I'm not going to give him an A+ because there were some other runs, by some other guys. But, I mean, you got Anthony Grant, first Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year for a running back for Nebraska since 2018 with Divino Zigbo. Did I read that right? Oh, my God. Dude, Grant, even though it's against FCS competition, so I get it, you got to kind of hamper your expectations. There's still a lot to love about Anthony Grant there. He just looked good. The moves he was making, running through people. I mean, he's fast. He's the best running back. I think it may be early to call it, but he may be the best running back we've had under Frost. I really like him. I think he's been a great play. He's turned out great so far. There wasn't much. A.J. Allen looked okay. I was upset that they gave him carries against Northwestern and burned the red shirt, but it's very clear that he's the number 2 guy. I don't know what happened with Ramir Johnson. Gabe Ervin did nothing. Didn't see Yant. But it's very clear right now that Anthony Grant and A.J. Allen, I said Austin Allen, A.J. Allen are the top 2 guys. So that's the grade for them. Wide receivers, I'm going to go B. You still had the problem with the drops, but I think Trey Palmer going up and grabbing that pass, I mean, that made up for it. The receivers, they played a solid game. They get open really well. Mickey's got them running good routes. He's got them getting open. It's just a matter of can they catch the ball, and there were just a few more bad drops. It wasn't as bad as last week, but there were some bad drops. Tight ends, I'm going to go D. Borkircher had that touchdown catch, but there were some other bad drops. And you know what, C. We'll do C. I'm going to go C because Chancellor Brewington had some great blocks. He had a solid. He was clearly targeted, by the way. I don't know what in the world that was all about. But so I'll give him a C. They made up for it later on in the game, but the tight ends definitely started off rough. Offensive line F, and it's not even close. Again, back to back, just horrible performances by the offensive line. I really don't know. I'm concerned when they start playing teams like Michigan, when they start playing teams like Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota, Oklahoma, even. I mean, I just don't know how this offensive line is going to be able to stand up against a Big Ten defense. I really don't. Dominated for 3.5 quarters by North Dakota. Not even North Dakota State, who probably would have beat us if that's who we were playing. Dominated. I just don't see it, man. Again, I was really skeptical of the Raiola hire. I was holding out hope. I wasn't going to be overly critical before we ever saw him coach, but really skeptical. You had a guy who didn't have a long track record as an offensive line coach or the head of an offensive line unit, and he has done nothing to dispel those concerns I had since they brought him in. In fact, he's only proven that they were a little bit more valid than a lot of us had hoped. Really not sold on the Raiola hire. This does not look any better than last year with Austin as head or as offensive line coach. I just don't see it. I don't see the improvement. I mean, you've got guys like Prohaska that looked good under Austin that now look bad under Raiola. I was hoping Teddy just had first game jitters, but I don't know. I'm really skeptical of this offensive line coaching staff. So we'll see. They've got plenty of time to turn it around, but I mean, he looks like my fears and my concerns were valid. Defensive line. Moving to the defense. Looked a lot better. I do B. Not spectacular, but they got pressure. Wasn't a lot of interior pressure. The run game wasn't all over that. It wasn't as bad as last week. Again, consider the opponent. We're not hedging our grades here. We're just doing a flat grading scale. But they didn't look as bad. They looked like they made some improvements. It's a unit. You got to keep in mind, I mean, Devin Drew, one of the key contributors, he didn't even get here until fall camp. So they need some time to gel together. And we don't realize losing Stilley. I know everyone wanted to bash Stilley last year, but losing Stilley, losing Daniels, those were big losses on that defensive line. So give them time. Outside linebackers, A+. This is what we were looking for, man. This is what I wanted to see between Tanner, Mathis, and, of course, Garrett Nelson. This is what it looked like they just had one bad game. Now, obviously, they're not going to continue to dominate, specifically Nelson. They are not going to continue to dominate to that degree that we saw on Saturday. But if they can play at that level, they'll be one of the best units in the Big Ten. It's not even a concern. That Nelson, absolutely one-man wrecking crew. And with Mathis and Tanner coming in and cleaning up, I mean, it was great to watch. That's what we wanted. That's what we were advertised all offseason, and it was great to see it. Inside linebackers, I'm going to go B. I didn't think they looked great. I didn't think they really didn't do anything spectacular. Henrik was gone, so it's kind of tough to – but, I mean, Ernest Hausman had some missed tackles. Maybe B. Yeah, I think I'll go B-. So B- for inside linebackers. The issue at first glance, it looks like they're missing a lot of tackles, but it's not just guys getting juked out of their shoes. It's guys that are in bad position. So they're out of position when the ball gets there, and they never had an opportunity to make a tackle. And they dive and it looks goofy. But if you go back and watch it a second time, there's a lot of guys just not being where they're supposed to be, and that looks like missed tackles. It doesn't look like the Pelini era where the tackling was just egregious. It's guys are in the wrong spot at the wrong time and can't get a good look at the ball carrier, and that's not every case. There were some bad tackles, but for the most part, it was just poor positioning. Defensive backs, C-, man. They're okay. Tommy Hill looks rough. You can tell they miss the starting. You can tell they miss Dismuke and Williams from last year at safety. You can tell they miss Cam Taylor-Britt. Newsome looks okay, I guess, but it's a tough stretch, man. Defensive backs, they had a lot of guys that were that touchdown that burned them. I mean, I guess he averaged like 4 yards per pass attempt, so you can't be too strict on him. But again, it was the type of play that once you get up against better competition, Going to get killed, man. People are going to burn you for long 60, 70-yard plays. Northwestern showed it last week. Special teams. Special teams is so tough to grade because, I mean, you got a 46-yard field goal that looked like an extra point. Buschini did his job. There were no blown kick coverage plays or anything like that. But at the same time, you have a 37-yard kick get shanked wide left. We all had PTSD flashbacks from a year ago watching that. And then you have, I don't even know how to describe it, probably one of the dumbest plays I've seen in recent memory, at least, by Wyatt Lever on the punt. That you block, that was the most Nebraska thing ever. You block a punt, which, again, add that to the plus. You block a punt, you know, it's going to go 13. It's what happened to us all year last year. It's going like 13 yards, and then you run up and try to grab it. Well, there's 4 players from the other team standing there. What? I don't know. I don't know if he just had a mental lapse for a minute and thought that he was on the coverage team. I don't know if he thought that he was going to be able to grab that ball and run it for a touchdown. You block the punt, take the net gain, man. I don't know what he thought. We got lucky there on a technicality in the rule. Otherwise, that was going to be disastrous. It would have been a phenomenal play for us that turned into disaster, which would be kind of Scott Frost's MO since he got here. But, you know, what are you going to do? So Wyatt Lever, with that, I don't even know how to grade special teams. I think I'm just going to go flat C. Because, again, Buschini looked good. A long field goal. You didn't miss any extra points. You blocked a punt. No disasters on kick coverage or kick returns, punt returns, etc. But you had just a couple. I mean, a boneheaded play and a shanked, what should have been a chip shot field goal. So, I don't know. First game nerves, whatever. Hopefully that'll improve. But I'm going to go C. C+ on special teams. Coaching, tough to grade. You can tell they in the first half, their goal from a coaching perspective, they wanted to just go out there and run a vanilla offense and just kind of out-muscle them with talent. And as soon as they realized that wasn't working, they had to get a little bit more creative. Frost swears up and down that was not an onside kick, which we were all joking about once we got up by 2 scores, saying, oh, here comes the onside kick, and then he actually did it. Swears it was a squib kick. That was the ugliest squib kick I've ever seen, if that were the case. I like to give him the benefit of the doubt and think he's not dumb enough to do that 2 weeks in a row. But at the same time, it's, I mean, what was he thinking? He's like, well, I'll show them. I'll get it this time. Dude, it's North Dakota. It's fine. You don't need to do that. And it was after a penalty, so it was a shorter field. So it wasn't, it made like, I think it was like a 7-yard difference versus had they just kicked it into the end zone or the guy called for a fair catch or whatever. So it wasn't as big of a deal as the Northwestern game. So I'm going to give him, against my better judgment, the benefit of the doubt on this one. I'm going to say that he wasn't trying to onside kick that, because I really don't think anyone would be that stupid. Really don't. So that's that. If I was wrong, if I was right, if I missed anything, let me know in the comments, please. Let me know in the comments your score predictions for the Georgia Southern game as well. I'd really like to see that. Make sure you follow me on all my socials, at Caleb Isn't Funny on Twitter and Instagram, at Caleb Salvatore Comedy on TikTok. My new show, That's Based, coming to Outlaw Streamers this month. Be on the lookout for that. My other podcast, Bread and Circuses, my comedy podcast. I'll appear on the Chris Baker Show semi-regularly. You can hear me on there as well, kind of making fun of the news and what's going on in the world. This Friday, September 9th, you can see me at Beach House Bar and Grill, formerly Wired Pub, formerly Shamrocks, for those of you real alcoholics out there that remember it back in the day. We'll be doing harmful content comedy. That's my monthly show. You can see this month we will be featuring Tyler Walsh, the TikTok sensation. He's from Bumfuck, Iowa. He's hilarious. He's moved to Omaha a couple years ago, wanted to pursue comedy, and has absolutely, I mean, he's doing it full time now, hitting the road, and has blown up on TikTok. Guy is like internationally famous, recognized on the streets for doing his TikTok thing. No matter where he goes, he's got people that travel to see him do comedy. He's going to be a great show. You can get tickets right now online for $7 on eTix. We'll have the link posted below in the description. Make sure you go check that out. Again, you don't get to see talent this good for this cheap. We're also going to be featuring Gabriel Freyer, he's a MMA fighter and commentator turned comedian. He is the host of the Deep Thinkers and Beer Drinkers podcast. And then we got a couple other funny people on there. Julian Johnson, he's very much of my ilk. He's going to be hosting it. He's going to be our special guest host for the night. Just make sure you check it out. It's going to be a fun time for everybody involved. Really appreciate everyone that came out to the roast battles and made it so special. We're peacing out, though. I'll see you next week. Thank you. Have a good night.